Alright, Q&A time. Figured I'd try like this, do one question a video. Jess Army, you asked, with reports recently coming out that WWE officials think the UFC has no stars, do you agree? In comparison, do you think the WWE is more mainstream than the UFC? What company has the bigger stars? Well, first of all, I think it's hilarious that the WWE would say that the UFC has no stars when you look at who the UFC's heavyweight champion is. It's like WWE is saying that this guy who was a multi-time world champion in our company, who we promoted as a huge star, is nothing in the UFC. I just think that's laughable. And I think guys like Brock Lesnar, Rampage, GSP, Forrest Griffin, Rashad Evans, Clay Guida are definitely stars. You know, they're sports celebrities in the same way that Kobe Bryant and Tom Brady are sports celebrities, whereas the WWE wants their guys to be just celebrities. And I think they've really got an uphill battle in front of them if they want to pull that off. As for which company has bigger stars, I mean, that's all subjective. I mean, is John Cena a bigger star than BJ Penn because he made a crappy movie that tanked at the box office? I don't think so. But it's apples and oranges, you know? Do I think WWE is more mainstream? Absolutely not. The UFC is a legitimate sporting event that is hotter than it's ever been right now. WWE is a lowbrow entertainment product that really hasn't been hot in a long time. I mean, back in the Attitude Era, it would have been a completely different story, but I definitely think the UFC is more mainstream these days. I think UFC has plenty of stars, and bigger stars than the WWE has in terms of how these guys are perceived in mainstream culture. Thanks for your question. Alright, the Go Home Impact before Slammiversary. The show was okay, that's about it. Wasn't horrific, but it definitely was not what it should have been, all things considered. Most of the matches were alright while they lasted. Of course, they were all too short. But the main problem I had was that there were a lot of inconsistencies with the writing that really became noticeable this week. Logic gaps that this creative team really needs to stay on top of. For example, we had a Knockouts Tag Team match, Daphne and Angelina versus Taylor and Kong. The heels lost and then they beat down the babyfaces afterward. So Daphne is now teaming up with the Beautiful People, the women who cut her hair off, to fight Taylor, the woman who she blames for her getting her hair cut off. They really need to explain that better. And they need to give us some kind of explanation for why Daphne is pissed off at Taylor and not the Beautiful People. It doesn't have to be a huge explanation, it just has to be logical. I mean, if Daphne sees Taylor not helping her when she got her hair cut off as the bigger offense than the heels who were doing the cutting, so she decides to direct her anger at Taylor instead, that's fine. That makes sense. But you need to tell us these things. You can't just have her team up with Angelina without even bothering to mention how bizarre it is that those two can suddenly coexist. Another problem I had was the Sting and Matt Morgan angle. Now, I don't have a problem with Sting wrestling Matt Morgan at Slammiversary. I do have a problem with how they set it up. Matt Morgan said that he can't get an opportunity to prove himself, basically challenges Sting to a match. That part was fine. But then Sting says, if you beat me, you can have my spot in the main event Mafia. Where the hell did that come from? Okay, what does Sting get if he wins? Nothing. If Sting had said, you can join the main event Mafia if you beat me, that would be one thing. But no. Sting decides to put his own spot in the group up for grabs against Matt Morgan, basically suggesting a stipulation where he has everything to lose and nothing to gain for no reason whatsoever. And this really reminded me of this retarded storyline that WWE did a few years back with Rey Mysterio. It was after Eddie died. Rey had won the title shot at WrestleMania, and then I think it was Randy Orton came out and goaded Rey into putting up his title shot on the line against him in a match for no reason at all, even though Rey had absolutely nothing to gain by doing this. He agreed to the match, Randy Orton beat him, won the title shot, and Rey ended up looking like the biggest dumbass who ever lived. And I'm not going to say this is exactly like that, but it was basically the same thing. Sting had no reason at all to put his spot in the main event Mafia up for grabs against Morgan, but he did it anyway. And now, if Morgan beats him at the pay-per-view, Sting will look like the biggest idiot on earth. By that same token, Christopher Daniels is wrestling the thing that ate Shane Douglas this Sunday. When he challenged Douglas to the match, he said, "You can have my spot on the roster if you beat me." Okay, again, what the hell is that? Alright, Daniels has no incentive to do this. He just got his job back in TNA after he was, gone for a year and a half, and now he's saying this guy can have my job if he beats me. Alright, I'm sorry, but I have to ask a really freaking obvious question here. Why would a man put his job at risk for no reason at all? Daniels could just as easily have challenged Douglas to a match with no stipulations, but for some reason he decides to put his job on the line on top of that, and it makes no sense. Something else I want to mention here, something that had no place on a go-home show before Slammiversary, Raven versus Trevor Murdoch / Jethro Holiday in a Clockwork Orange House of Fun match. Alright, first of all, why do I care about Jethro Holiday, and why is he on my TV 3 days before Slammiversary? Second, why did he get in so much offense? He controlled most of that match, which made Raven look horrible. Okay, not that Raven looked good, not that Raven looked that good anyway. I mean, it seemed like he was just going through the motions out there, but given the storyline he's involved in, he should have destroyed this guy on general principles. And why are you booking a match like this just 3 days before you want people to pay to see a Monsters Ball at the pay-per-view? Speaking of the Monsters Ball, oh god, Abyss and Taylor Wilde are facing Raven and Daphne in a mixed tag Monsters Ball at Slammiversary. Why? TNA, do you not remember that you just had a Monsters Ball with women on your last pay-per-view that was not well received? And in hindsight, that match makes even less sense now than it did then. I mean, why have a Monsters Ball at Sacrifice if you were just going to have another one at Slammiversary? I mean, if Taylor and Daphne had started their feud with a regular wrestling match like I suggested, then there might be more interest in this. But you killed the whole novelty of women in a Monsters Ball last month, and now the fans have seen them in this type of match. They know it didn't turn out that well, so they'll be less inclined to order Slammiversary to see it again. I mean, at least this match will have some actual hardcore wrestlers involved in it. Abyss, Raven, but we've seen those guys in this match before, and now we know that Taylor and Daphne are really out of their element here, so basically you're booking your second watered-down Monsters Ball in a month. Now, I actually do like the storyline what they're doing now with these four characters, but this match is completely messed up. On the plus side, the sit-down interview with Samoa Joe was awesome. The stuff with Joe and AJ is terrific. They're definitely sowing the seeds of a feud there, and they're doing a great job with that. I thought Abyss's promo on Raven and Daphne was great. Loving Daphne's character right now. I like what they did with the Knockouts title feud. That was a good segment. Although, I really think they need to feature Tara more. I mean, they want her to be their top female babyface, but they haven't really done anything to re-educate the fans on what she's all about. And I talked about this previously. I mean, Tara was WWE enhancement talent for the last several years and was booked like she couldn't win a match to save her life. And then all of a sudden she shows up in TNA, she starts kicking everybody's ass, gets put in the title picture immediately. And that could end up being damaging to the perception of the Knockouts division if you're not careful. And frankly, I'm not that surprised that the crowds haven't really responded to Tara that much for the last 2 weeks. I'm not surprised that her in-ring debut lost 45,000 viewers. I really think that the writers needed to rebuild her character before she got a push like this. Because right now it feels like, hey look, here comes that lady who couldn't even beat an idiot like Brie Bella, and she's coming to kick the beautiful people's asses all by herself. Yeah! You know, it's just not as effective as it needs to be. Taking on its own merits, Impact was okay this week. Unfortunately, it was like a lot of the build-up for Slammiversary was, kind of underwhelming. And underwhelming is not what you want to deliver on the go-home show before one of your biggest pay-per-views, especially when you have a card like this. And don't get me wrong, this is a good card. I mean, there are some potentially awesome matches here. The King of the Mountain matches look great on paper, they have solid build-up, and I think both of them will be fantastic. This Beer Money Team 3D program has, I think, been TNA's best feud of the year so far, and I expect them to have another killer match just like they did at Lockdown. Tara versus Angelina, I think, will be really good, but it's kind of hurt by Tara not really having any credibility after the way she was booked in WWE for the last few years. You've got Sting versus Matt Morgan, and Morgan's part in this whole thing was set up well enough, but he's only been interacting with Sting for like the last 2 weeks. And before that, it was more about Morgan and Kurt Angle. So even if they do, some kind of swerve where Morgan and Kurt Angle are secretly working together against Sting, which is what I think will happen, but going in, it kind of feels like this match was thrown together at the last minute, even though it wasn't. Daniels versus Shane Douglas, I really don't care about that much. I think the stipulation of the match makes no sense at all. Douglas should not be in this spot, and he's so out of shape that who knows if Daniels will even be able to carry him to a good match. And then you've got the mixed tag Monsters Ball, and TNA blew their wad with the idea of women in a Monsters Ball last month, and I'm really not interested in seeing it again. The three big matches look tremendous on paper. I feel like they will definitely deliver, but the build-up was not as good for the other four matches, and they might be good matches, they might even be great matches, but I feel like they're not going to have as much meaning as they should, with the possible exception of Sting and Matt Morgan, but that one will really depend on what happens afterward. The main matches are awesome. The undercard is kind of shaky because the build-up for those matches was lackluster. Going into this show, they only had 3 matches announced. But I think if they can pull this off, Slammiversary will be a good pay-per-view. The big 3 matches are definitely worth my money, so I'm going to order it. That's all I got. I'm out of time. I'll talk to you next week.